right.
chatting. Yes, let's start the meeting now. 8:01 introductions. Okay, everyone want to introduce yourselves?
Okay, I'm Andrea Blum from the City of Sisters.
Mayor Richard from La Pine.
Megan Perkins, Bend City Councilor.
Is Kat on? Do we see Kat?
I don't see Counselor Zwicker yet. I'm texting her, trying to get her access. She'll be on shortly.
Eliza Wilson, HLC board. Sorry, I'm sick today, so I'm going to be off camera most of the time.
Thank you, Eliza. Is Molly here? Okay, so Chris, I see you're on. Let's see. What about Eric Crop? Is Eric here? I don't see the whole screen.
I don't see Eric here yet. This is Nick Lelak, Deschutes County.
Thank you, Nick.
Eric's on as an attendee. I just promoted him to a panelist.
Okay, doke. All right, thank you.
And
All
I
right.
rejoined as a panelist, Molly Heiss, Neighbor Impact.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, thank you. All right. Let's agenda review. Any questions on the agenda, anyone? Okay. So I believe we can go ahead then with our agenda for today. Approval of the minutes and finances. And thank you. Any comments on the minutes from the group?
No.
All right.
Would move approval of the minutes.
Okay.
I second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So good. Yeah. Thank you for dating the financials. That's good. All right. So now do we have Ariel and Mike on? Are they on yet?
They are.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
I'll get us. Oh, Ariel, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying good morning. Go ahead, Mike.
I'll get us kicked off maybe then. So my name is Mike Savara. You see him, his pronouns. I'm the Special Initiatives Director at Oregon Housing Community Services. It's great to be with you bright and early. I do wish you all, was able to send some donuts my way, but I'll have to settle for, the CD trick that the mayor was talking about. So I wanted to just join today. I've been talking with the staff just about kind of where OHCS is at in terms of really thinking about our future system and some of the things that we've learned from the work of Governor Kotek's executive order. And I know Ariel was going to dig in around League of Oregon Cities policy priorities and sort of next steps in thinking about 2025. So I will kind of kick us off just with a few thoughts around sort of where we saw House Bill 4123 communities kind of fitting into the executive order work by and large, and sort of how it informed our thinking about some of the strategies that we used to actually accomplish some of the executive order work. So as you all may know, I know we've spoken to this board before, that the executive order work across the state really was driven around this idea of regional coordination. It would not have been possible without the framework of having local groups, local decision makers driving the work and really setting the tone and tenor for how things were to be accomplished. And in that way, it really is a spiritual successor of House Bill 4123, the work that we saw under the executive order creating the multi-agency coordinating groups, for instance, the MAC groups. And in your community, the COIC obviously is the MAC group lead and really drove a lot of the work and has continued to drive a lot of the work for providing rehousing services, additional shelter, and really making sure that the overall picture of the project is successful and on track. So that model of having a centralized regional focus that is driving the work, setting the tone, driving towards the strategies and solutions is really the gold standard that the state has been driving toward under the last year and a half through this executive order work. We've done that in the EO MAC group regions through these MAC group establishments under the COCs, the continuums of care. And then in the balance of state, which has 26 different counties, we've established another model we call the local planning groups. And those are very similar to MAC groups. They essentially create a county or two county region to build that in. So by and large, the House Bill 4123 groups we saw as a great opportunity to build on what we were doing. And I know we were talking yesterday in kind of preparation for this conversation. We see so much of how this pilot work has influenced your community's ability to get amazing work done, and really been able to catalyze the work towards actually coordinating the services across the whole region. Obviously, this is just one county's coordinating body, but then if you really think about the importance of building in your tri-county response, I think it's something we've learned from and seen a ton of great effort around. So in large part, we're seeing this drive towards regional coordination in our future budget. As we prepare for 2025, the agency and the governor are really aligned on a few key priorities. And one of those is that we do not want to lose ground on the progress that we've made. The investments the legislature has made over this last biennium have been game-changing and really dynamically improved our ability to create opportunities for rehousing, provide street outreach workers, to solve problems that were previously unsolvable at the scale that we were working with before. And that is the main priority. We want to make sure that those resources are sustained and maintained into the next biennium. And that includes the regional coordination work. We've seen the power of having local leaders, decision makers helping to drive this work. And we don't want to see the ability for that to move away, or the structures in the infrastructure we've created move away. So our intention is to really build on what we've done this biennium and make sure that the sustaining efforts are there in terms of our agency request budget. And we're excited to continue the work of engaging the legislature in the success of the MAC groups and the processes that we've seen over the last year, and how we can continue to end homelessness and address it in really practical ways through additional investment. So I think those are some of the big things that we've seen. The House Bill 4123 communities were instrumental to helping us decide and design this system. And I know your community is no stranger to that. We've seen the success of this model, as well as the larger regional coordination work, to really drive towards those outcomes. The fact that we have someone to call when there's a community need, or there's an issue that we're trying to support, is really just changes our ability to engage with local communities in a new way, and really giving that autonomy to local leaders to say, this is what we need to do in our community. Here's who we want to focus on. That really is the heart of how we're hoping to move forward into the future. So I'll pass to Ariel, and then I'm sure I would love to take any questions or comments from folks too.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ariel Nelson with the League of Oregon Cities, part of the lobby team there, focused on all things housing and development, and was really honored and grateful to be able to work on House Bill 4123 in 2022, and actually really help design that program, which was or the legislation. It's not a program. I want to emphasize that it was always intended to be a pilot, and a seed money and a foundation to support regional coordination. And we are seeing, as is the case in Central Oregon and other parts around the state, we're seeing that regional coordination evolve over time as more local governments join formally as partners, or informally as new partners are identified, new service providers. The entities identified in the bill for each pilot were really who were ready to come to the table and commit when the bill was being drafted and passed. And that was really to provide some structure for the initial funding, but was never intended to be static or a permanent program, or a permanent structure for any one community going forward. So just wanted to emphasize that. The league, as Oregon has, facing an increasing homelessness and housing crisis, the league has taken a stronger priority and more emphasized role for cities and our advocacy around homeless response. And we've actually just finalized our policy priorities going forward for the next couple sessions. They're now going out to the full LOC membership. Every city will rank them, but the Community and Economic Development Policy Committee has identified a priority around a broad priority around shelter and homelessness response. And that has kind of three major components. First and foremost is the league will be supporting a comprehensive funding package, statewide funding package for shelter and homelessness response. And some major components of that are first and foremost that it's going to be support. We want to see it have a budget line support, continued permanent support for that regional coordination, as Mike was speaking about. So we haven't seen that identified by the state yet, how they intend to fund and continue that really critical regional coordination that is needed at the local level. So we'll be advocating for that in partnership with counties, community action agencies, continuums of care, housing authorities, other critical service provider partners in the network around the state. We also want to make sure that it's recognizing the range of shelter types and strategies. Really feel that conversation with the state is really important. So just wanted to emphasize those pieces. I, in my role at the league, having worked on House Bill 4123, had been providing kind of convening and facilitation support for the 4123 pilots. It's not something that I have capacity to do all the time, certainly during legislative session. However, I think hearing that there is a lot of energy among the pilots for advocacy, coordinated advocacy, particularly around this regional coordination piece. So looking forward to working with Central Oregon and with the other pilots around that. But, understanding we're supporting regional coordination statewide, whether you're a MAC group, a local planning group, and where there are 4123 pilots represented throughout. And really also recognizing the important advocacy and experience that the pilots can share, particularly around how the initial funding from the bill has allowed them to leverage and draw down additional dollars, federal, philanthropic, other grant funding. And that's really, really critical. And that's not something that, unless you're a really big agency with some extra admin from other programs, and even then, really needing that dedicated funding to support a staff or a team to do grant writing, to do resource, to identify resources, to do the strategic planning, and to convene, which is no easy task, to convene and coordinate with all of the partners. So that's where the league is at right now. I'm happy to take any questions, but we're looking forward to working together with Central Oregon, with the Crow, and with the other pilots and other communities and partners around the state.
Ariel, I have a question. It's Commissioner Adair. How many of the original 8 pilot projects are still in existence?
They are all still in existence.
Okay. And then you mentioned 26 counties that have their own program. Aren't we? We're still missing 2 counties though. Who's not part of it?
I didn't mention any number of counties. I
think Mike did.
Oh, sorry.
There were 26
Go ahead,
counties.
Mike.
Yeah,
And I'm just wondering if the 8, so that we still have 36 counties. So who didn't participate is my question.
Oh, great question. Yeah, I probably I wish I had a good map for us, Commissioner Adair. So there are 26 counties in the balance of state COC. Within those counties, 6 of those counties are House Bill 4123 pilot communities.
6.
And so
right.
there are some of the local planning groups, there are 16 local planning groups that make up that 26 county balance of state community. Some of those local planning groups are the 4123 communities. So there's an overlap here, if you will. And so that's what we were seeing in the balance of state communities. And then in the executive order regions, there is 2 House Bill 4123 communities. There's Polk County and then Uwall here. And so I think that's sort of there's this overlapping nature of how the 4123 communities are fitting into the executive order system that makes it a little bit more confusing. But by and large, we saw, especially in the balance of state, the 4123 communities were well positioned to be those local entities to receive the resources. In the regions where there's a continuum of care, like in Central Oregon, that typically spans more than one county,
Yes.
It made more sense, in a sense, to have the tri-county regional approach versus a single county. But in a sense, we're seeing the overlap there. Hopefully that was helpful.
And Ariel, don't we have forms that are due like by November or something? I know we used to have monthly meetings that you were leading. Is there still information that we're supposed to be filing?
Sure. So there's just there are kind of two reporting responsibilities to be aware of. The first one is whatever DAS is requiring of you through your funding contract with them related to if you've spent your funding. You have to report to DAS regularly until you've spent down the original grants. And then in the statute, in the bill, there are two legislative reports. So I think you're referencing the one that was due last fall, and you're right, there will be a second legislative update report due this fall. And so I had created a template to kind of provide a foundation for the pilots to kind of answer the same questions in the same order. And so I think we'll do something similar, but it will really be up to each pilot to kind of provide an update on what you've accomplished and where you've come in the last 2 years and since the last legislative update.
Okay, good.
But there were just two of those, so it will just be this one next fall. But I think that will also be great timing to educate and advocate with the legislature around the importance of regional coordination and the great work that's been done.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure we were staying on track. So thank you for that information.
Just a quick comment. I think I'll probably just highlight some of the things that you said is I think there's an important role for the MAC in the community, and there's definitely an important role for 4123 type organizations, because it is really important that we have local leaders that can lean into this work and then can bring that back to their respective jurisdictions and say, you know, this is where we're heading and this is what we need to do. And I think that my concern is that we have set up something new, and it always takes time to get going when you set up something new. And a lot of these pilots are just getting going, and exciting things are starting to happen. So it would be a real shame if we weren't to have something next. And so whatever we can do to help advocate in the legislature or with the governor's office or wherever, I think, you know, we will be there, because I think it's important to listen to all these pilots and see how we can develop something new that but not so new that it takes away all the great work that's already been done.
Are there any oh, yes, Tammy?
I just wanted to mention that we have the Regional Housing Council, which is something that we've also been engaging the state in discussions around, which would be where elected officials can come together and have a regional discussion around the conversations that are happening in the CROW space, if you will. It's not perfect, but it's a foundational something that you all could use to mold into what could be the next iteration. So I just offer that as the platform that could easily be used to achieve the things that you see as a region that you want to achieve.
And thank you for that. And Mike, for what I'm hearing is that permanent supporting housing is going to be a project that you all are going to be behind. Hopefully we have a couple amazing projects that will be coming into effect next year, from what I'm hearing. So talking to one of our service providers, there are people that are never going to get out of this situation. They're 71, they're disabled, they only have so much money coming in, they've got some maybe mental health issues, and permanent supportive housing for those individuals, because we cannot get them back. But we do have a tremendous apartment vacancy here in Bend now. That's, yes, it's up to like 11%. I believe we've probably overbuilt. The prices are still incredibly high. Hopefully the prices are going to start coming down, but for people that can get their credit score up to 600, you know, we're hoping that we can get them into apartments.
Wow, Commissioner Joe, that's incredible. I hadn't realized that the market had shifted so much in your all's region. So that
well, it's just in Bend, it's not in Redmond, but Bend definitely. Yeah, there's like another 1,500 that are going to be coming into the system too. So, of course, the pricing is really high. You know, I am hearing some landlords are negotiating, but it definitely, when you make $25 an hour, you can really only afford $1,000 a month.
Right.
And yeah, so when you back into it, you know, you've got to be able to have money for food, utilities, all that. And I'm
Yeah.
seeing all these huge utility increase asks, like 22% for next year, and they
Yep.
already went up this year. Housing and utilities is really, it's going to be overwhelming for people.
Absolutely. I so appreciate you bringing up the permanent supportive housing piece of this too, because I think that's a big emphasis on, where the executive order work, I think, also needs to go, because we have almost exclusively focused on people experiencing unsheltered homelessness, often with, chronic health conditions, behavioral health disorders. And I think that's really where that next step often needs to come for some folks, is moving into a permanent supportive housing unit that has those on-site services, that's deeply affordable, and really isn't somewhere that they need to move on from. So that is absolutely going to be a big priority in our agency request budget in the coming months, that you'll see reflected there. And I think we've seen that even. I think I was chatting with the COIC folks just this last week about some ideas that they're having about how to use executive order resources in an existing permanent supportive housing site that really needs some additional dollars to braid in, and so some really creative thinking from the team here already about how do we make this work for the folks that you're seeing. And yeah, so appreciate you naming that. I think the other piece that we've been really excited by is this idea of sort of unit access and being able to sort of use the market forces for good here, and to say we're going to get those units that our folks that are experiencing homelessness need by block leasing, by ensuring we have access for our folks, even if they don't have a perfect credit score, because they're going to get the supportive services, and there's a backing from the local continuum to make sure that the resources are there, they can pay their rent, they can get what they need done. So I think there's really great opportunities here. And we're really building off of the things that have been working for local communities to try and achieve more goals and support more folks. So really appreciate all that.
Wait, I don't know. Has Kat arrived? Oh, yes, she is. Kat, she's on mute. Kat, did you have anything you wanted to say this morning? I know your hand is
Oh, I
raised.
just, for whatever reason, my video is not working, so I apologize, but so far just, I'm gonna echo what Megan did say. I think that we need to be very aware that this program has been very new, and it's kind of like we're just getting up and running and getting everything coordinated. So we do need to be very conscious of next steps, because it would be ridiculous to then just pull the rug out from under what is working.
Yeah, we don't like rugs being pulled out from under. Yes.
And Patty, I'm glad to know that you were not sitting next to the bull when he jumped the fence. So very good.
Oh,
I was in the red rows when that happened. It was just exciting.
Oh, that must have been, yes, the party bus.
Yeah.
That woman, she was very relaxed when she got hit. I cannot believe she survived that. It would have killed me, because I would have just like, oh my God. Yeah, to see that coming. Anyway, do not wear red when you go to a rodeo. That's a very important statement. Yeah, well, at least made it all the way across the nation, Pat. So I'm glad to hear that you're okay too.
Yeah.
Any other comments about this?
You know, I might have one more. When we're looking at these vacancy rates, Patty, has anybody reached out to the property owners to see if they would be interested in incentivizing a portion of their units? Do we have any ability to do that?
I'm meeting with Bill Kuhn about that. Bill has access, and so it's in the works. I'd mentioned it to Tammy last October that the apartments were at 8.7% vacant, which was historically incredibly high. And then my number in May came out from Business Oregon, and he had told me it was 11%, and trending up. So that's what we need to do, is we need to be working out some kind of a plan with owners, because in order for them, their vacancies are really going to go high.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Patty.
Oh yeah, I'll loop you in when I meet with Bill, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, if there's no other questions regarding sustainability, so Mike, are you saying this program is, we're going to continue on? We have a 5-year commitment, but you're saying we can't expect anything else to come from the state then regarding it?
Good question, Commissioner Dare. I would say that the means by which regional coordination will likely be funded is really as part of the overall investment in the systems rather than as a like a distinct investment, like how House Bill 4123 was built. In a sense, I think we're seeing it needing to be integrated in with the way the services are delivered, so that it's tightly connected between the regional coordination investments that need to be there. The work needs to happen. But the regional coordination investments and the services, the money for shelters, the money for rehousing and outreach need to be tightly connected so that the coordination is driving towards those results. I think the big picture is that we want to see a system that's really focused on outcomes and delivering results for Oregonians. And we think regional coordination is essential to that, that ingredient to make that happen. But we're seeing it as an integrated whole rather than as a distinct thing that happens separately. Then I don't know if Ariel has other pieces that, as they're thinking about their legislative strategy, she may have other thoughts, but that's sort of how we thought about it so far.
And thanks for the question, Commissioner. I can share, we haven't really gotten clarification from the state and from the governor's office yet about how, what the governor's proposed funding package will look like. And of course, that's the governor's recommended budget, and there's a whole legislative conversation from there. But we know we do expect the governor's proposal to kind of drive that conversation. I think that we will be looking to see regional coordination as a line item. I mean, it's part of the outcomes, it's connected to the outcomes, as Mike said, but as a line item, I think that the details that will need to get figured out, and I think that each region will need to work on individually, is who is in that coordinated seat. And does that, is it slightly different than who it is for the 4123 pilot now? Or is it the same entity? How are you demonstrating regional coordination? I mean, how are you going to communicate that, right, to the state? I think that will be important to figure out for each community. But we do see it as critical. And I also think part of this is, we've really seen OHCS and the state, the agency, playing the role as a funder and kind of a pass-through entity. And I don't know that we've really unlocked how to drive those outcomes through their role as a funder. Right now, OHCS issues funding contracts, and sometimes those are direct to the provider, and sometimes a larger entity acts, maybe it's the COC, or maybe it's a community action agency. It's different around the state, acts as kind of a pass-through, and they will issue an RFP and contracts, and then there's reporting done. Are you meeting these outcomes that we want to see? And none of that really supports or incentivizes the regional coordination to actually work together with partners on the ground, establish trust, coordinate kind of who is working on what strategies. That's really difficult to do through just a contracting structure. And so that's the conversation we're hoping to have with the state in the near term, is how do we, and I think it's similar to what Mike was saying, is it's not just funding regional coordination to fund it, but how do we meaningfully build that in and inform the outcomes that everyone wants to see? So that's the conversation we're hoping to have. And those are the conversations we're starting to have with some legislators in partnership with the governor's office on how we can get there together. So I think it's going to be really important for each community to be able to communicate clearly kind of where they're at. Every community is in a different place. We want the state to recognize that. We want the state to recognize that there are different entities playing critical roles in regional coordination. And that hasn't been happening, particularly for some cities, but even some other entities, housing authorities, community action agencies. So it's going to be really helpful and important for each community to be able to say, this is what our regional coordination looks like right now. Here are the key players. Here's how we want to work with the state, because we really want it to be locally led and have the state support the work that's happening on the ground already.
Well, I appreciate the permanent supportive housing. I do have one piece of excellent news is that Best Care, who had 26 overdose deaths last year, this year to date has only had 1 overdose death. And prior years, they had one a year. Last year, they had 26, 3 in 1 week. So that was my really fabulous news on Tuesday from Rick Treleffen when I asked him. But the other issue that, Mike, I want you to be incredibly aware of is 92% of the people that were in our jail, they were studied one day, analyzed by Captain Schultz and 2 other members of his team. 92% of them have mental illness and or drug use in the jail, 92%, one and or both. So that's the population there. And what happens when they leave the jail? Where do they go? And when you realize drugs and mental illness, it's really huge. It was a population of 232 people. I believe it was about maybe five weeks ago when they did that daily analysis. So I was told when I said 80%, you know, it wasn't, that was way high. No, it was actually 92%. So just wanted to share that with you. I think it's really a critical, it's telling you the population we're working with and what is it they really need.
Yeah, Commissioner Jara, that's a startling statistic for sure. And I think I know just personally, I've seen a lot of that work when I was a service provider as a addictions counselor and a social worker. That is such critical, like that overlap between where folks have those needs and what they have to navigate to get the services they need. I think one thing I'll just plug really quick is that we're really close to launching a pilot for behavioral health and rehousing that will be going out for all of the different MAC and local planning groups across the whole state. And it is exactly why, your description of the problem is exactly why we wanted to focus on that. It's a small pilot. We're probably only going to be able to select a few communities across the state. And it really is to test, can we bring the right mix of behavioral health services in to braid with the housing system and to effectively collaborate towards some really great results for folks that have behavioral health disorders. So I think we're excited to test it out, test some of our theories, and give local communities a chance to really show what they've been working on and how things can be really successful, and then inform future programs. I mean, that's the end result, is that we want to better set the tone for future programs for building in a program that can support people with behavioral health conditions who are experiencing homelessness. So coming months, we're hoping to release that and get more info out to the communities on it.
Thank you, Mike. I hated to bring I know I'm way off time wise, so I know we have to go on, but I wanted you to know that because I think that is incredibly significant and it really can't be ignored. We really need to go on now to item number 4, funding for the RFQ projects. Tammy and Eric Kropp.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ariel and Mike. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem, was there anything else that you wanted to add? Okay. All right. Just didn't want to step on you. Great to see everyone this morning. So we are bringing to you a recommendation as a backcast. The governor's office has agreed, based on the encouragement and advocacy of this group, to award $1.1 million in shelter pod funding. That agreement was signed 2 days ago. We do not have the funds quite yet, but we are prepared to distribute those on your behalf as soon as the money lands in the account. And so wanting to let you know that those are for not purchasing specific shelter pods. They are for the ability for our Deschutes County pilot. So these would be utilized in the communities of Bend, Redmond, Lapine, Sisters, or in Deschutes County proper. And they are to be for the development of those units, but not for the actual operation. As you might imagine, that's not a lot of money, but thank you to Mickey, who previously had done a lot of outreach to find out what are pod costs across the state. What are we experiencing in terms of some conservative numbers of what that might mean. And so we're bringing to you today a recommendation that we look at a way to provide guidance to COIC to distribute those funds to the projects that have been Tier 1 or Tier 2 awarded through or moved forward rather with each jurisdictional sponsor. And if they should need funding for the pods, how would you like us to distribute those to those projects? So there's a list of options here, and the numbers that I would associate with this that I would say would be relatively conservative would be that pods can be anywhere from 6,000 to 25,000, depending on what type of pod, who's building them, where they're coming from, etc. So it would seem reasonable to have a project cost, if you will, around the $20,000 range, and that would provide for an average. If some are coming in, 10,000, some are coming in 25. But looking at how you would like to distribute that money, do you want it for each unit? Do you want it based on a consideration that we negotiate alongside the project sponsor, which would be, again, the jurisdictions? So it'd be Deschutes, Bend. It wouldn't be the actual project service provider. Would you like them to send their total project cost to us and we negotiate that? What really is the will of the board in being able to distribute those funds? And I'm happy to answer any questions. You can see here what we've outlined. Also happy to do a short RFP process for others that may have not been part of the RFQ process, or really it's at your will.
Point of clarification, we're not actually going to vote on this today, correct? We're just asking questions.
Oh, sure. Thank
Just wanna
you.
make sure
Thank
that
you.
we-
Yes, we're, thank you.
For
So
us to mull over.
yes, mulling. Yes, we're mulling today. And the primary mulling is, it seems reasonable to set a certain amount and let us negotiate and work within that. But really, if there are other ideas or thoughts that you have, happy to entertain those too.
So, Tammy, this is Counselor Zwicker. Do we have in the world, in the realm of the tier 1 and tier 2 participants, any cost breakdowns of what they thought these pods would cost, or were they just providing generalized numbers? Because when I see some of these things come out of the ground, I feel like there's room for negotiation. I just can't help myself. I see that there's different ways to get to that end result, and it doesn't always have to have the cost that I'm seeing. So, and since it's only, and I'm going to say only $1.1 million, I would like to stretch that as far as we possibly could across our providers.
Absolutely agree. And great question. We've received one draft, and it's very draft. Think of it as the back of the napkin, for some unit costs, which were around the 6,500 price range. Now that's the actual physical pod itself, not necessarily if for the electrical, some of those other infrastructure pieces. We may also be able to use some funding, and I'm using sort of vague terminology only because of eligibility and all the requirements, with some of the MAC funding to help with the projects too. And you also have the CRO funding that remains that could help to augment some of the ineligible costs for some of that infrastructure. Some may need the concrete pads. One of the projects actually does not. And so again, the variables between that, the only concrete sort of number I've received so far is around that 6,500 range.
I believe that the pods that are used at the villages were 11,000 that the Gales brothers were doing. Honestly, we have those little shelters next to Highway 126, and we're supposed to be having scenic highways in our region, and those pods immediately were, someone said, gee, is that a homeless shelter camp there? I mean, I would like things to look at least inviting. I did have a conversation this morning at 7:15 with Janice Garceau, and they've got to have a bit of charm to them. The Veterans Village, I know, is it's way more expensive, but something with a little more thought and charm, so that people realize they've stepped out of the wilderness. They're in a structure now. They have that to surround them, and then they can transition to even something better. But I think 6,500 doesn't seem like it's very much.
And we also don't want to be purchasing pods and then needing to upgrade them or replace them because they didn't need the inclement weather that we experience here, or they just weren't weather worthy, if you will. So I hear you, and I think that's a great comment and something for consideration. And so again, today we're offering all of these ideas, and then if there's anything else that you want to add to this list, we will be bringing this back to you at the meeting on the 20th for some guidance and direction into how we would, allocate that funding on your behalf.
Okay, and it does have a year, right? According to your note,
Yes,
the
yes,
funding is till June 30th of 25.
yes, and I will also use air quotes around allocate funding because we are looking for loopholes of being able to maybe hold funds that go beyond that, but they are awarded and to a project sponsor, but maybe there's a timing challenge. So we're working, it at least needs to be committed, if you will, by that date to that project.
Are we taking and putting out an RFQ to a wide area? Are we looking for local production of these pods? As in, I don't think that we need to reinvent the wheel, but I'm sure that there are other locations that have gone through the affordability, durability, replaceability, mobile, so I'm just wondering, how far are we spreading our wings?
Excellent question, and that really is at your discretion. We do have a great list of those producers that make the pods, whether they're pallet structure or whatnot. And so I would leave it to the individual project to determine what it is that they feel is best. I don't know that the state has a contract for some pods or units, if you will, that we could utilize. That would be one product, if you will. It'd be like buying from one housing developer. And so it really is at your will. The recommendation would be that doing an RFP for the limited number of providers that would be placing the units might get us a whole lot of information for a small return. It might work best if we reversed that and allowed them to go out to the one to do that themselves and then pick one and request funding for what they feel is the best, most durable, and just the best unit for the project that they're planning to do.
Sure.
And Tammy, that 65 or plus or minus number, what is our margin there for successfully meeting the goals of this funding?
So we are committed to 65 plus or minus units with the 1.1 million investment. And I use plus or minus because that was a fungible number. There we gave, and again, thank you to Mickey for doing a lot of that legwork a few months ago. We gave an average of what we were seeing across the state of what other units being implemented in other coordinated houseless response office regions. And so that's what we base that on. And they know that that number is sort of a plus or minus.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
So at that rate, it's like 17,000 a unit.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. And again, it will, if some of them are coming in at 10,000 and they don't need some of the other infrastructure, I think we will be able to, go up to that number of 20-ish. But again, it'll be an average and a negotiation.
Right, because I totally agree with Commissioner Adair about if they do get placed near a scenic highway or someplace that's exemplary of our county, maybe more aesthetic value, is required. I'm sure functionality is required in everywheres, but I think that there's a place for aesthetics also.
Excellent.
I agree with the aesthetics, but when we had to add the fencing around the airport zone to prohibit the unhoused from living within that landing zone, the RPZ, that is much more offensive going down Highway 27 and seeing row after row of fencing with barbed wire.
Yeah.
And it looks very like a prison encampment than seeing the Oasis Village structures.
Well, I wasn't saying barbed wire people in, but I think that there's
but that's what it looks like because of what we've had to do. So that's
right. I was just saying like more landscaping, more trees, more.
And they have that in their plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is for you to noodle on.
Okay, so we will be having a vote then at the meeting next week.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So did Eric have anything he wanted to add?
Yes, Chair, I was going to summarize the board discussion earlier this week on Monday about the RFQ process.
Yes.
On Monday, the board had a conversation at a work session about the RFQ and the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 projects. The board in general was very supportive of both tier 1s, which is the Oasis Village expansion of 10 tiny homes.
Eric, first,
yes.
I want to acknowledge that 1.5 million has been allocated by the county, and we're following our money. So I just want to let that be stated. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah, the discussion with the board was mainly around the county's ARPA funds that have been set aside for this process. The Oasis Village expansion of 10 tiny homes was generally supported. The commissioners wanted staff to explore this option that Tammy just talked about with state funding and the pods there. The second tier 1 project is the Central Oregon Villages safe parking at the former location that Don's house used to do safe parking. So those two projects were generally supported. Then the board discussed the 45 acres southeast of Redmond that the county owns that is critical to the DSL land exchange. There were no specific projects submitted for the 45 acres. So what the board asked county staff to do is to first talk to City of Redmond staff about some possibilities, and then meet with Redmond service providers to talk about the 45 acres and to learn from the Redmond service providers about what barriers were there that prevented any projects from being proposed on the 45 acres and what could be done there. So staff has more work on that, and the board wanted to be careful not to allocate the county ARPA dollars without addressing the 45 acres. There was also discussion about Juniper Ridge, the county-owned property in Juniper Ridge. There was a proposal to do a project on the county-owned Juniper Ridge land from Home More Network. The intergovernmental review team really liked the project, but it was very large scale in nature, and the proposer has not had experience doing such a managed camp, and currently has one FTE or one staff person. So while the review team liked the project, it was rated tier 3 for those reasons. There have been discussions or interest of maybe doing a smaller scale version of that on the county-owned Juniper Ridge land. So there was discussions with the board about learning more about that.
Can I just interrupt there? Actually, Jessica Gamble has met with Chuck Hemingway, and they are looking at Juniper Ridge, working on 5 acres, start small, but be successful is what their goal is. So they're still trying to pull that together, which would really be incredibly helpful to us, Deschutes County.
Yeah, so what came out of that meeting is staff will be working and looking at some projects on the 45 acres, do a little bit of more exploration on Juniper Ridge, and then come back to the Board of Commissioners. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I guess I'm not understanding. I'm not tying together the work of the RFQ with the work that the county is doing separately. And I just want to make sure that that work is not at odds with the amazing work that we've done with this RFQ. So I'm just a little confused right now.
Sure. The projects that were submitted, really for any project to move forward, there are, two main things have to happen. There has to be a funder, and then the property owner has to agree. So the discussion with the board was on kind of the county's ARPA dollars and what projects the board would support with the county ARPA dollars. This doesn't prevent any other entity from moving forward. For example, I think this is a very good example. Central Oregon Villages has a proposal to put tiny homes on the City of Bend property located on Highway 97 South. So on that project, if it was going to move forward with county ARPA funds, it would need Board of Commissioners support, or at least 2 commissioners. And then, of course, as the property owner, the city of Bend would need to support that. In discussions with our board, there did not appear to be two commissioners supporting that project. So for that project to move forward, it would have to move forward without county ARPA funds. But it's not to say that that project can't move forward.
So the ARPA dollars are gonna go to the 45 acres and what else?
There's been no decisions, but the board seemed to support the two tier 1 projects, which is the Oasis Village expansion and the safe parking at the former Don's safe parking location. And then the 45 acres and Juniper Ridge, those were the main projects that seemed to generally the board supported. Again, no decisions were made. This was just a work session discussion.
We have a real problem, and we have that 20-year getting the homeless up the East Antler. So we've definitely got to get that done. And we are meeting tomorrow afternoon with Redmond over individually, at least as commissioners, and talking about the 45 acres that we have within the city. Because you all know we're really having to watch our finances very, very carefully. Things have definitely tightened up in our world.
One more comment on a project, the Mountain View Community Development expansion of safe parking program was a tier 2. And talking to Rick Russell, he received some additional county funds for safe parking. And then he's going to refine his proposal on what was submitted for the RFQ process in terms of locations. And so that's still also in the works or still in play.
The city of I met with Rick Russell along with a staff from the city of Bend too, and we're just talking about future expansion into particularly North Bend. So,
and the important thing is to talk to Rick's board so they will support him, because Rick actually has the vision, and they have a phenomenal program that they're thinking about doing on the 9.27 acres next to Oasis Village. So it's, thank you, Rick. He understands because he was a landlord originally, and he understands that you need a 600 credit score, and, it's the whole picture there. So I appreciate that. Eric, is there anything else you want to bring up? Any other questions from the group? Okay. Oh my gosh, Molly and Eliza.
Good morning. I did not send out the budget, but I do have it here. Eliza and I have been going back and forth with the possibilities and the probabilities. Much like you said, Commissioner Adair, obviously funding is starting to recede from COVID era times, and investments continue to be directed where they need to be directed. I think that one of the things that we really need to with this data request and the letter, and Eliza, I'm happy to let you respond as well. I'm just trying to save your voice. That we need to really succinctly understand what it is that the Crow would like to see in terms from this investment. So I'm going to start by sharing. Chris, can you give me? Do I have capacity to share my screen? I do. I'll just dig right in here. Okay. Let me know if you can see a Excel spreadsheet and if you need me to make it bigger.
We can see it.
Okay.
Looks clear to me.
Okay, I'll make it a little bit bigger because I know that my eyes have a little bit of a hard time. So this is maintaining staffing levels as current, noting that on line 8, the in-house services data coordinator is supported in part by the HLC capacity grant through Central Oregon Health Council, which is the end of its three-year stint. The HMIS specialist and CES coordinator, you'll see there, I've highlighted those amounts requested in yellow because those are the two continuum of care grants that Neighbor Impact receives. We receive a fixed $53,000 for the HMIS specialist, and we receive a fixed coordinated entry supportive services only grant in the amount of $37,718 annually. And those really can't go up because of the annual renewal demand, which is a whole thing that only those of us that have been knee deep in the COC application annually understand. But if we move those amounts up, we're taking away from direct client service programs like rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. And we also run the risk of HUD saying, wait a minute, what are you doing? You can't redirect money to your own systems away from clients. The one opportunity that we may have in this is often there are special projects that HUD releases when the competition comes out. And if they are looking to invest in data, certainly we would apply for that additional project. So adding the CES specialist on line 9 would be to expand and staff the coordinated entry phone line. I know that there's been a lot of conversation about expanding it. We're currently doing 4 hours every Tuesday and Thursday, which really isn't meeting the need. And we've also had an agency or two step out of staffing that. So we need to reinvent that. And I just threw money in there to staff it. Sometimes the only way you can control the availability is to staff it in-house. So have some staffing requests there. We need to look at a different model for the phone line itself, which I think we're proposing Google Phone or Teams Phone. I've heard from a lot of CAAs that they're having a lot of success with Teams Phone. And since Neighbor Impact is very Microsoft heavy, we would have a lot of support on that end. Did a little quick research. So some of these numbers are probably not as finite as they could be, but would need to do a little more research. And what Eliza and I chatted about in development of this budget is seeking some HUD technical assistance, because we do have that available to us as the continuum of care, to really highlight successes or pathways to success that some other agencies or continuums of care across the nation have had. Investing in a formalized dashboard and some location software. So I know that the county and possibly the city have access to ArcGIS. So I don't know if we could maybe like tag on to a license there and experience some cost savings or something like that. These are at the recommendation of Ben Scott, our current unhoused services data coordinator. And having a full Tableau professional license suite to enable creation and really making a really nice forward-facing data dashboard available to the community and to the region to identify the successes that we're having as a regional approach, not just the continuum, but also the CROW and the Regional Housing Council and all those, just to create one-stop shopping ultimately, starting obviously with the unhoused programming and moving into expanding it exponentially as we have space. I'm going to move down, so close your eyes if you get motion sick. NHSDC training and travel for the 3 staff, probably not the specialist for the coordinated entry system, because if they're just doing phone work, they're just doing phone work. Certainly could share resources with them as we come back. But National Human Services Data Consortium, this is kind of a culmination of HUD COC programming, best practices. It's a really nice place to work with your peers and your fellow data geeks. It's one of my favorite conferences, and I haven't gotten to go with my different role, but really offers space for us to stay on top of all of the tools that we have in front of us and unique ways to capture the data and illustrate it to the communities to present the successes. I think that's one of the things as we move into these funding EBS is that we really have to highlight our successes and show and I'm assuming that's really the Crow's primary goal with these data dashboards, is to highlight the successes, to increase collaboration. I won't say reduce NIMBYism, but increase collaboration. A language access contract will be huge. The Built for Zero contract we already paid for many moons ago with planning money, and that's a one-time fee. So I put it in here just to be aware of it, but and the language access contract is obviously vital. We would look to have a bilingual staff as the coordinated entry specialist, so we can honor our primary other language spoken across our region, but obviously there will be a need to be inclusive and a need for additional languages. The Zoom account for the coordinated entry meetings, it's a cost that's woven into the HLC as a whole, so it might be something that COIC is paying out of the planning grant, so there might be some cost savings there. Obviously, we need to integrate more and more lived experience folks into all processes around unhoused response, including data, so there's room in there for stipend. And that looks like continued review of our processes and our assessments, et cetera, to ensure that we're not re-traumatizing, et cetera. And then to round it out, I just put the NHSDC training down here under this category of professional training and development, and then really being able to have one or two experts in-house that really can navigate Tableau and ArcGIS. And maybe that's not a huge cost, and we work with somebody regionally that's got this dialed in. And then admin and overhead costs for space and for those indirect costs. So that gets us to about 240, just under 240. Going back up to the top, and I will send this out as soon as I'm done talking. Annual requested project funds of 245, knowing that there is an investment on behalf of the MAC group under the LTRA, which is long-term rental assistance funding. There's a commitment, I believe, and Tammy, you can nod or shake your head, for 225,000, and that is around really bolstering the coordinated entry system. But I think that all of these pieces lend to that. And that is 225,000 set aside within that funding, as far as I know, and Neighbor Impact has been identified as the project administrator. So I feel like this is a reasonable data systems budget, given like creation and maintenance of a data dashboard that's regionally reflecting the successes, especially of those communities in the Crow. And that if there's more that we need to do, we'll need to augment the budget. Eliza, do you have anything? Tammy, was I incorrect? I saw you come on camera and then I didn't look.
You're correct. Yep.
Okay.
Just nodding and thumbs up.
Okay, well, I was then looking at numbers instead of your face, so I missed the nod. Thank you.
Molly, I would also add that as we look at long-term sustainability, there is a conversation to be had with the CCO and with the Central Oregon Health Council too. Pacific Source in particular is interested in doing some data investments. And so for the Crow members, just so that as you're thinking, there are other partners that we can be engaging for some longer term sustainable funding here too.
And Neighbor Impact has applied to be a network hub for the CCO HRSN funding. We don't know the outcome of that, but certainly are working with some other community partners and some partners on the health side to put together a white paper to present regardless of the outcome of the CCBF, which is Community Capacity Building Funding Grant application. So we're in it on all angles and happy to bring the data together. I would really like to continue to invest in this and create just a larger system that's inclusive of all of the inputs. I think we've got a lot of good work happening and we're not telling the data story as a cohesive picture. And I think that's really important. Eliza, do you have other things you want to add?
I think the only thing I would add, thank you, Molly, for that. I think the only thing I would add is that we want to work with the CHRO board and really the community to look at like what information is wanted, like to be publicly available. And we know there's like common things that are asked, from us, from the COC around like the pit count and then just like monthly data. There's some really good examples of this, like even San Diego COC does it really good. There's some other COCs that do a really good job of this. And I think we don't have to, reinvent the wheel. And if there are folks who are more interested in this and want to work with us on it, that we could, perhaps like do a committee or something to kind of outline what the needs are. And we don't expect you to really know. I mean, I think there's like what you want, and then there's what we have available as far as data as well, like what we already collect.
Can I, just a couple of things. One, I cannot believe that there is another system that uses more acronyms than the government. That's amazing. That was like all acronyms. I could barely follow along. And then two, the quality by name list, just, it's something that keeps getting brought up. And do you feel that this is something, I know that one of the things they talked about was they needed a champion, like to help move that work forward. And I feel like it's been a little maybe stalled with this money. Would that allow that to happen?
One of the things that is going on behind the scenes that we have not communicated very effectively, because it felt like, I don't know, it just felt like we were making excuses, I guess, but Built for Zero is going through some transformational changes. And so they haven't been at the table with training and data refinement and things like that. So that's one of the reasons that we are not moving forward as quickly as possible. I think there's still valuable pieces in there. I don't think we would, as the continuum, invest any more dollars. I think that there are other ways to get this work done well. And I think sometimes it's just connecting with HUD and aligning with those communities that are really having some successes. And not to abandon ship on Built for Zero or any of that, because their thought process is really accurate in that they're looking at inflow into the system and outflow and successes. And that's really a story to tell. I mean, those are the questions that when your constituents come to you and when service providers come to you, they want to know what the inflow is and they want to know what the outflow with the placements are. So that very simplistic nature of that process is 100% valuable. They are claiming that they'll be back at it as soon as they get some reorg done. We're hoping to continue on with that, but we're not going to just sit in waiting for Built for Zero anymore. Yeah. We're going to move forward. So just in terms of messaging, that's where we're at with that.
I also imagine that we are a pretty unique COC when it comes to our homeless population and where they are and what the demographics are. So.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that with Built for Zero, a lot of their successes are not successful implementation is in more metro areas where everybody is available. And when you look at the fact that the COC covers 15 to 17,000 geographic square miles, it's a lot. And so working on kind of core, maybe subsets of populations, they work in buckets of population. But if we look at maybe like looking at shelter or street outreach data and getting that refined first and look at the data buckets versus the population buckets, that might help us with some more successes. Eliza, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and the way that we're going to do that and move forward is by requesting TA from HUD. So we'll, especially when we get fully staffed, which Neighbor Pact just hired another person. So in having like the folks who are the experts and who give us these these things that we have to do and ask them to help us on data and quality improvement.
I had a comment about, I want to make sure that when this is all being considered and prepared and whatever, that there's a certain amount of flexibility built in. I know so many times a data gathering system is built around absolutes of what people want and need at the time. And then there is a shift, and the legislature could very much, it sounds like, make a little bit of a shift in its funding as time goes by and its requirements and whatever. And we don't want to have to reinvent something that, you know, is dedicated and it can't move and it's not flexible and we can't change it and we can't modify it. So I don't know how you do that, but always keep in mind that we are not wizards and we cannot think of everything that we might possibly need or want in the future, and that hopefully there will be some flexibility in there. Also, I was wondering, what sort of timeline do you see this finally coalescing into something? You're talking about getting funding from several different sources and potential for grants and hiring new people and evaluating what other people have done and all this kind of thing. So what do you think? I mean, when are we going to be in a position where we actually have a product that is an improvement over what we have now?
I think that we can, I think, so 2 out of 4 staff positions are already held here. We have renewal, we've gotten our grant agreement from HUD for the renewal of the HMIS and the CES funding that 87,000 or 80, yes, almost $90,000 that we get annually from HUD. So that's handled and coming our way. We're in the 3rd year of the Central Oregon Health Council grant. So there are 2 fully funded positions within there. Getting the CES position hired, we already have a job description that has gone to COIC for collaboration and to the coordinated entry work group. That 3rd position for manning the phone lines basically is that 4th position, I apologize, is that would be the one that would need to be in the works. But that's something that's just augmenting and adding to the system in hopes to increase the data inputs, et cetera. I think as soon as we get Tableau and ArcGIS, as soon as we get those purchased, that we have in Ben Scott, we have a data analyst already. So his familiarity with some of those platforms is already, he's not starting from ground zero. So I think what we can do is start to offer some kind of draft and pre-publishing dashboard probably by mid-October. I would say I'm trying to be generous because he's got a new staff to train, but there's capacity there, and then fine tune from there with what you want to see. And looking at the data that we have already in our system, because we already have data points. It may not exactly answer the question, so that's what we need to figure out and kind of work, consider this not a concrete, but a Play-Doh sort of product that we can make it what we need and want together.
Thank you.
And I've emailed the budget out. No, Kat, you don't have it. Okay. If you don't have it, please let me know. I
can make sure that it gets to everybody, Molly.
Thank you.
You bet.
Kat mentioned she did not have it. Do you want to do that, Chris, or you want me to do it? I can do it quickly if need be.
I'm on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and Eliza and I are going to, we're both in different roles than when we started this kind of process. So I think what we're going to need to do is delegate to strong staff and come up with a plan in the TA and have them be actively involved. And so you might see another face presenting this next time. Just so I think that's the only thing to let you know is that we're going to transition it to staff that can be more responsive to this so that we don't just try to do it in an adjunct to our larger roles. Councilors Wicker?
I'm just going to let everybody know as we go forward with this and discuss it and make a vote on it, I'll have to recuse myself because I do sit on the Neighbor Impact Board. So, but happy to add my 2 cents, but I won't be voting.
Might I suggest that we switch 2 items on the agenda since we're running behind here, that this kind of flows into the summer work groups conversation, and then finish with talking about the roundtable. It's up to you all, but
I can't hear you, Patty.
Yeah, I can't hear you, Patty, either.
I'm fine with that, Megan.
Nope, can't hear you.
Patty, if you want to come down to my office, I can get you on my screen.
I know, I was having this message.
And there's mute, you're unmuted right now.
Okay, go ahead, Megan. I'm sorry.
okay. Yeah, great. Okay, I can do this in 1 minute. So just thinking about summer and that there is some concentrated work to do, but also that it's really hard to get together in a formal setting over the summer. Had the idea to maybe just go into work groups, kind of similar to how we did, gosh, what was that, a year and a half ago? The idea would be that any board member could attend these work groups, that there's no assignment that this person goes to this one, but that if you were going to attend the meeting, that you would need to give prior notice, obviously, in case we have 3 of us there. No official meetings in July or August, and then the idea of these groups would work over the summer and then report back to the full group in September. And the 2 thoughts I had were, one, we're CHRO 2.0, as we could call it, right? Which is, taking guidance from the state partners that we heard from today and working with other 4123 communities to help really help us make sure that we are getting our interests met as we go into this next phase of the CHRO, and also while making sure that we are at the table in terms of advocacy, with the legislature and with the state. And the other is that really, once we start voting on how we're going to be spending our money, making sure that the money from other sources, making sure that that we're being, that they're being utilized correctly, and that it's happening expeditiously, in terms of either the data dashboard or the RFQ, even if China Hat, if that's an option, something like that, and that we're just doing that as quickly as possible and breaking down barriers. And so wanted to know what you all thought about that, and if you were interested in this as a concept.
I don't think it bothers me at all.
No, I'm good. I'm good with it. I think it's a good idea.
So if there were 3 members who participated in one of these at one event, I would assume that they would not take any actions that would need to come, that should actually come back to the full board.
Good question. I mean, I know it would have to be noticed. I think it would be more putting together a series, and Tammy, tell me if I'm off here, putting together a series of recommendations for the full group to address in September.
Correct.
Okay, and I suppose if something came up that really needed action prior to the fall, there wouldn't be any reason why we all couldn't get together if there was a need to do so.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I don't see any problem with that, and I think it allows some flexibility for people who are going to be gone quite a bit or have some other things to take care of. But for those, you know, who want to see that the momentum doesn't just dry up over the summer, which sometimes things do, I think this is a good idea.
Actually, I'm worried that who knows what's going to happen this summer, what our situations are going to be. And I think if those meetings were set up for the Thursdays that are our normal meeting day, I really don't want to think, I don't want the public to think that we are just on summer vacation till September. I think, you know, July, August, it could be critical in what's going on. You know, I just got the 911 calls from China Hat. Yeah, there's who knows what kind of fire situations we're going to have, but I do believe that having some kind, you know, if it's a work group, but having it at that consistent time, I think will help our public in order to make sure that things are not done out of the public's eye. So do we need a motion?
We're not taking any actions today.
Okay, that's right. We're not. So we should have this on our agenda then for next week.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Sounds good. I believe that we're at 9:22. Is there anybody with the roundtable that wants to bring anything up at this time?
Yeah, I'm happy to just introduce the concept for next week's meeting. Mickey and I have been working with USICH, the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, over the past few months. We've connected with Katie Miller. The U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness works similar to the CHRO, where a bunch of different federal departments work together to address homelessness. And they have taken an interest in China Hat at the behest of the Forest Service and local partners. And so there's been a request from federal partners to have a roundtable discussion on the 20th about China Hat and camping on public lands. And so the concept for next Thursday is a longer CHRO meeting from 10 to 1 p.m. That's noticed already. The idea is that we'll have a 2-hour kind of working meeting with public partners. This meeting will be held at Ben Parks and Rec, the Riverbend Community Room. And we're going to have a 2-hour conversation about the current state of folks living at China Hat, and then what are some potential short and long-term solutions to address it. And following that 2-hour discussion, we're going to have a 1-hour, a little bit abbreviated CHRO meeting to take everything we've talked about today, everything we'll talk about on the 20th, and ultimately make some decisions as to kind of what the next kind of work plan for the CHRO will be. That's the intent. And so just wanted to offer an opportunity to answer any questions for folks or provide any extra clarity that would be helpful.
Extra clarity. I do believe I have been working on China Hat since 2019, seriously. And I want people that have been dealing with that problem to be able to be allowed to be there. I think it's really incredibly important. They have been dealing with this, the gunshots, the violence, break-ins into their house for years. And the fact that this is put together and those people are not given any respect for the crime and crap and drugs and destruction of our public lands right in their backyard. So anyway, that is.
Are you saying you wanted like public comment at this roundtable?
Yeah, I want Sandy Baxter to be able to be there. She was a prior police chief. She's had bullets whizzed by her head. There are people that have been working on this for years on trying to get something done, and to have them, I believe they deserve the respect and their opinion needs to be heard at the roundtable.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea was that at our Crow meeting immediately following, that's when we have sort of the recap um, of what happened over those last 2 hours. Some of those representatives will be there, and that we allow public comment at our Crow meeting, which would be the time, I think, when people could make that comment. They would be there. Right, Mickey? They're going to be, a couple of those representatives will be at our Crow meeting following.
Well, then we should have the public comment at our Crow meeting at the very first and not the last, so that they, in case they leave.
Sure, sure.
I-
Maybe they do the summary first and then the public comment. Would that make sense, right? So they could get the information first and then, or what do you think, Patty?
I want those people that I've been working with, I want them to have the attention of the people in the federal government. So, yeah, I
We
would
just-
like flip our
yeah.
meetings, agenda, not at the last, because right now it's time for public comments, and, I believe we need to do that. It's 9:26. And of
We
course,
have to make sure that we don't allow the public comments to end up taking up all the time, however, because I know
agree. I think I
there are
want to
so
be
many people that would love
cognizant
to
of that.
comment.
Mhm.
It's hard.
they can also bring in, letters.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good
They
idea
can-
too.
They can make comments, they can have, okay, let's say 2 minutes, and then they can hand letters, because I know I had 50 people 3 years ago at our county meeting testifying. They brought in the pictures, the destruction. I mean, you heard 80,000 pounds of trash at Willow Creek in Madras, 80,000 pounds. And what's happened out in China Hat, that blows those numbers out. So anyway, I need to know, is there anybody for raised hands? Does anybody see any public comments at the moment?
We've
there
got a
raised hands?
couple. Yep,
Okay.
there are a couple. I'm gonna let somebody named Citizen in first.
Thanks.
Citizen, I've just promoted you. Okay, perfect. I think they're in. Linda, I'll promote you as well.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. There's kind of this technical delay. It gets a little dark on my end. Okay, hi. My name is Jenny Lingard, and I appreciated listening to the portion where there was Mike, I believe, is it Savera, League of Oregon Cities, Ariel Nelson, and just some of the future outlook of this coordinated Charo office and how there's local planning regions and all the different things, all the different levels of effort and how it will dovetail. And there was specifically permanent supportive housing that will be, I guess, peered in on or more so focused and invested in terms of dollars, government support, governor support. And is there advocacy through state of Oregon at the federal level to address the 16 bed limit for the treatment beds? So there's the treatment beds, 16 bed limit. And I think that's a hardship because there's a scalability issue. And also it's very costly to create a building for 16 beds versus having a larger facility for those that have high needs, chronically need much more support. And some of those needs may even be above and beyond permanent supportive level. So with that, permanent supportive housing is very, very expensive. I think it's the most expensive type of housing. And I don't think our county and state can necessarily afford that because it's, as Patty mentioned, one day tally of who's in jail and what are they experiencing. 92 people. It was something phenomenal, like 3 out of 4 or higher were in the throes of some high mental and drug addiction needs. So I'm just curious if there's some advocacy at the federal level to have a breakthrough to allow people to get more help by having larger buildings, still smart, thoughtful, wraparound services, but have a cost savings to be able to help people get the needs that get needs met. Okay, that's my public comment. Thanks.
Chris, do you want to not recognize the next person? I don't.
Yeah, I'm trying to promote Linda. I've sent a couple invites and messaged in the chat, so we'll see. Oh. Okay, she's over.
Chris, am I on now?
Yes, you
Yeah.
are.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I just wanted to thank you for allowing me to make my public comment again. I really enjoy listening to all the work you guys are doing. I think it's phenomenal what has taken place over the last year and some months. I wanted to address the roundtable next week with the federal officials. I think it would be really important to have some members of the public, like Patty had said, who have been living with this nightmare for over 5 years, attend that, at least so they could gather the information and hear what's being discussed at the roundtable. And then I think, you know, having public comment at the beginning of the Crow meeting makes a lot of sense. But I think the public should be allowed to at least listen in on the roundtable meeting so that then they have the information firsthand rather than hearing, you know, from other officials about a summary. So I would advocate for that. And secondly, I don't know who all is sitting on the panel for that discussion, but I would really encourage whoever's putting that together to make sure that law enforcement is included, especially a member or two from Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, because they live with this firsthand and they have been boots on the ground on this problem for over 5 years. And I think their firsthand knowledge would be really beneficial. Thank you.
Thanks.
There's
Thank
one
you.
more
Any-
hand up,
Okay.
Jessica Gamble.
Jessica.
And for what it's worth, Linda, the meeting will be recorded and folks from the public will be able to view as panelists, just like how this meeting is structured. That's our intent.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so well, thank you for having me and thank you for all the information shared here as well. I wanted to just make mention real quick on Jenny's comment. I feel one of the really important factors as far as people being able to work through their mental health and substance use problems is being able to help them move through barriers. Once some of those barriers are removed, which can oftentimes be something that doesn't have a high financial cost associated with it. It could be anywhere from a few $100s to, you know, maybe $10,000, $12,000 to help them clear up and completely rebuild their lives. I think being able to support people moving through those barriers is a really important thing to consider. I also wanted to ask about the roundtable and if Homeware Network, or at least I might be able to attend as a panelist. I used to live at China Hat back in 2019, and I have been very involved with working at China Hat since then. And so I may have some insight that might be valuable as well.
I can address Jessica there, Linda Long, who has also lived at China Hat and was a member of our Human Rights and Equity Commission. She is going to be there too on the panel.
Okay. Is that something that we could request though, that I also join the panel?
We can request that, Jessica.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is anyone else? Because we're now at 9:34.
There's no other hands raised.
Okay, great. So then let's go ahead and adjourn this meeting. And we will see everyone. Oh, yes. Thank you, Chris. Last day, huh? It's the 13th. So, yes. Well, you're moving across what, 3 blocks over or 5 blocks over. So I know you're not moving that far. Anyway.
Yes.
So
Could I
enjoy.
could I ask a transition question? Who's gonna be there next week? And like, what's the transition plan here? Can anyone let us know? Because I don't see anyone else like
We'll send an
Eric
email
on
out
here.
and let you know.
There will be staff to support. It's likely going to be like Mickey and COIC have been really involved in helping set up the conversation for next week. So I'm expecting a high level of support from those folks. But we'll make sure that there's plenty of staff and that everything runs smoothly next week.
Thanks,
you.
Chris.
Yep.
Thank you, Chris, for everything.
Yep. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Chris.
Yes, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you all so much. Bye.
Bye.